Hey guys, what's good? It's Finch here. We're doing a video on what might be my most used Pokemon of all time historically, and that would of course be Black and White Overused Latios. For those of you that don't know, Black and White is probably my best tier. While I do happen to excel at SMOU and SSOU and various generations I've never used as well, Black and White has always been a tier that I've called my home and my main tier that I play. And the face of Black and White Overused happens to be Latios. Why, you may ask? Well, to put it bluntly, 130 special attack, 110 speed, and access to Draco Meteor, which in this generation, as you can see, is 140 base power. That also has a stat boost by Latios. It really doesn't need much more of an introduction than that. Needless to say, Latios is one of the top Pokemon in the generation. Um, Many people have argued that things like Landorus T, or Politoed, or Keldeo, or Tyranitar, of course, are better than it. And yeah, sometimes they might see more usage during specific periods of time, but as of late, Latios has been the most splashful Pokemon in the tier, the most offensively effective Pokemon in the tier, one of the most conveniently usable defensive Pokemon in the tier, believe it or not, and also one of the best progress makers in the history of Black and White Overused. And here is why. Well, Latios has some counterplay in terms of, say, Ferrothorn, or Tyranitar, or Jirachi, which is seeing less and less usage over the years. Latios is still able to always make progress. In the past, it was forced to run Sleep Talk, but the ban of Sleep actually made it so much better as now it can run Trick over that. So let's say on turn 3 you get in against a Politoed or a Keldeo on a rain team, you can Trick, and if they switch to their Ferrothorn, which especially is likely to happen if against your Keldeo, but Politoed might use Protect, but if you get that Ferrothorn on a switch, you Trick them, and all of a sudden it's crippled all game. It can only click the same move, and you could just start spamming Dragon Pulse to it. It's not going to be able to take much and do much back. It might just set up spikes in your face, or knock you off of your leftovers that you just acquired. Alternatively, you could run Recover over Dragon Pulse, which helps a lot against Ferrothorn and also against Thundurus T or against Keldeo. Dragon Pulse is great though because it's really spammable. Um, Alternatively, let's say you're facing a team with Tyranitar and you get rocks up early on in the game. If you make it switch into rocks one time, then all of a sudden Surf can always 2-KO it, or even after 2 turns of rocks, Draco can 2-KO it, depending on rolls and the spreads, with the choice Specs Latios. So even Tyranitar isn't entirely safe, although lately they've been running plus special defense more and more with alternative means of pressuring Ryu Nicholas, which is the main reason why you'd run Adamant on Chopple Tyranitar. But that's for a whole different video. Hint, hint, hint. Check out my Tyranitar video. I went in depth and shit on that, but that's besides the point. Latios is just such an immense threat, and the choice spec set is far and away not only the most effective, but also the most common. While Choice Scarf has picked up in recent years, Choice Specs is still more common. Let's get into the defensive uses of it, because Latios is actually a superb Pokemon defensively, and I think a lot of people underestimate that. Of course, it has some nice perks for it. It's immune to spikes and earthquake, for example. It also can resist fire, water, grass due to the dragon typing and fighting types, which make up a ton of the Pokemon that you see in Black White, and it has resistance to electric as well. Of course, it's weak to Pursuit, which doesn't help it whatsoever, but why is it as good as it is? That's a great question. Um, First and foremost, Keldeo is arguably very broken without Latios in the tier. Not much checks it. Latios is obviously pretty poor in the metagame right now. Amoonguss tends to run more physically defensive sets in the Brillo metagame, so that's really rough. On top of that, yeah, I mean, you could run like Gastrodon or Tentacle Rain, but not great answers in the long haul, honestly. So being a stop to Keldeo is huge. However, there's more. On top of that fact, it's also the fact that you can check Thundurus T, or you could soft trip Breloom, or you could come into Tentacruel or Politoed, and you could just nuke shit with the damage, or force tricks, for example. And last but not least, you're also one of the few things that can not only beat Renix, but also cripple it. And that's huge in the metagame, because Combine Renix is such a pain in the ass to deal with otherwise. Live any one hit from Alakazam and break the Sash with these. Revenge kill things like Garchomp, Landorus, Gliscor, yup. I mean, hell, you even sort of soft check Rotom Wash in a way, although they can whisk you and they can switch with a Tar or Ferrothorn, a lot of teams. Yeah. The brute force of Draco Meteor poison progress. I mean, for example, if you're facing a plus defense relaxed or impish Ferrothorn, you're doing 40% with Draco Meteor to resist Ferrothorn. Like, that's absurd in of itself. Like, this is the original Nuke when post-power creep metagames. Choice Specs Latios being allowed. And then you see in XY, you get Mega Evolutions, and SM, you get Z moves, and so on and so forth. Now you have things like Dracovish roaming free currently, and SOC. So yeah, power creep scaled up over generations, but like, you never saw something as strong as Spec Latios before like Black and White 1 started. Like, this was the shit. Before that, there was like Choice Band Tyranitar, there was Specs Heatran and DPP, and so on and so forth. But no, this was the OG Nuke. Specs Latios was hitting hard. Specs Latios was taking names. And I mean, over the years, you saw all sorts of things. And of course, Sleep Talk for Balloon and Amoonguss, as I mentioned. Also, there was a time when Psyshock was more common. You saw a lot of hidden power variants, hidden power fire, even hidden power fighting at times. Life Orb was used as a main set for a number of years as well, or like sort of main. Latios was more common. Yeah, I mean, there are a whole assortment of viable moves you could use, but Choice Specs Latios looking like this with recovery move like Rooster Recover as kind of like a backslash to Dragon Pulse is the main nowadays. Of course, it can also more so than Choice Specs. And Choice Specs, of course, needs no introduction, but Choice Scarf might. For a number of years, Choice Scarf Latios was seen as kind of kind of a underwhelming option in Black-White due to how vulnerable it was to Tyranitar. But recently, it's seeing a lot more usage on rain teams. Being able to trick Tyranitar is great still, and just damaging it with 2 Surfs or Draco into Surf, for example, is great. Outrunning Alakazam, outrunning pretty much anything in the metagame is great. Alakazam is a big one, but also outrunning other Scarfers like Landers and Garchomp is huge. Any like Salic Tracheon, being able to outrun that is great. Opposing Latios, being able to outrun that is arguably the biggest part of it. That and Alakazam, yeah. So that's pretty huge and worth noting as well. And I mean, a lot of times you're just tricking this off anyway to a Rhinoculus, to a Ferrothorn, to a Heatran, to a Tyranitar, to a Jirachi, if you will. Jirachi's actually gotten a lot less common. In a way, X still being added, despite giving another Dragon Resist, made Jirachi so much worse, that plus 2 Eyes of Gliscor, that Latios actually got better. Because Jirachi lets up Spike so easily, and is taking advantage of so easily right now that it's just not great. And Latios takes advantage of that and that being common. So it was one of the main like checks to it like over the years. And now it's basically just Ferrothorn and Tyranitar. And then a bunch of soft tracking. I mean, rain teams you see 3 or 4 protect users, and Latios is one of the main reasons why. However, there is one way to circumvent protect. I'm using this as a segue. The third set on Latios that you don't see a ton, but people like Rise have loved it over the years, especially over the last couple of months, honestly, is Calm Mind plus Dragon Gem. You Calm Mind up, Tyranitar takes rocks, and +1 Dragon Gem Draco Meteor can take it out. It's also really good on Dragmax if you remove Ferrothorn. Pretty much nothing in the whole world checks it, which is ridiculous, but it does lose the premium of having Trick for those things and the power of Specs. So I don't love using it a ton, but it definitely is a niche. But yeah, overall in Black-White, as you can see, Latios not only has some built-in versatility, but just amazing offensive presence. It was the original Nuke, and it's still staying that way. It's just so much damage outright. It's just such a fantastic Pokemon in the metagame, and it can be a revenge killer naturally with Specs, or even more so with Scarf. Great speed turn naturally, of course, and a great defensive typing that allows it pretty much a free scoot, besides facing Pursuit. I don't know why I said free scoot, like a free path to checking a lot of things, besides Pursuit. So yeah, it's kind of why Tyranitar is so good as it is, which sets up the whole weather-centric part of the metagame, if you will. But Black-White's more than just being the weather tier, there's so much to it. Winning Weather Wars does not define games at all, so keep that in mind. Black-White's not just some linear Weather War bullshit if you're a newer player. There's so much more to it. And Latios is a great example of why. Moving past the sheer effectiveness of Latios and its place in the history of the tier and the lore of Black and White, on top of that, it's worth noting that in recent months, ever since it stopped having run Sleep Talk and Sleep Talk being kind of relied upon, it also now can run Trick, of course. And a lot of people are saying that that pushes over the edge being broken. Personally, I believe Latios actually been broken for 5 or 6 years, but I think banning it would be detrimental to the tier. And seeing as it's old gen tiering, it's just such a mess to actually handle it. So, well, I don't support action. A lot of people are calling for a PR threat, a suspect, so on and so forth. And if that ever happens, don't be shocked. It is broken in my eyes. It's kind of needed to check Thundurus, to check Keldeo, even to soft check Breloom, and so on and so forth. It is the catalyst of so much of Black-White, how it unfolds, how progress is made, how games are played. And seeing a Black-White without it would just be a totally different metagame, and I don't know how to embrace that 10 years after the generation began. So, yeah, leave your thoughts on Black-White Latios in the comments. Leave your thoughts on other Pokemon you might want me to cover in the comments. And, yeah, one of my favorite Pokemon, timeless Pokemon for sure. Specs Latios and Black-White hits hard like no other at this point in time. And I hope you guys enjoyed this little in-depth analysis and picking my brain on the best Pokemon in Black-White ever used. Have a nice night. This is Finch. Peace, guys.